Jermaine Stewart is often remembered these days as a one-hit wonder of the 1980s, a singer known for one song and not much else. In reality, Jermaine was a very talented, very underrated artist who sadly had a tragic decline. William Jermaine Stewart was born to parents Ethel and Eugene Stewart in Columbus, Ohio on September 7, 1957. Despite spending his early years within Ohio, during his teenage years Jermaine and his parents moved over to Chicago in 1972. It was here in the city that Jermaine would enter the performing industry by becoming a dancer on the hugely successful show Soul Train. When the popular show eventually moved its operations from Chicago over to Los Angeles, instead of jumping ship with them, Jermaine, along with two friends, Jody Watley and Jeffrey Daniel, auditioned for the group Shalimar, an R&B soul group who would go on to success in the late 70s and early 80s. Whilst Watley and Daniel were selected to be backup and semi-lead vocalists for the group, Jermaine narrowly missed out on securing the lead vocalist position. Undeterred, however, he would perform with the group as one of their principal dancers, though he still longed for a recording career of his own. This dream became one step closer to reality after one night in London. Whilst in the UK's capital performing with Shalimar, Jermaine went on to meet Mikey Craig, a member of the then up-and-coming group Culture Club. Having just had success with their debut album and hit single Do You Really Want to Hurt Me, Culture Club were firmly in the mainstream spotlight, and thanks to Mikey Craig's help, not only was Jermaine able to produce a demo tape of his own, but he was granted the opportunity to sing backup vocals on one of Culture Club's new singles. This single in question, Miss Me Blind, would go on to peak at number 5 on the US Billboard Hot 100, giving Jermaine his first vocal credit on a top 10 single. Due to the success of the single, his overall ties with the Culture Club, and an impressive demo tape, Jermaine soon signed to a label of his own, Arista Records, one of the industry leaders at the time. In 1984, Jermaine Stewart released his debut album, The Word Is Out. The lead single was the song of the same name, and became Jermaine's first single to chart on the Hot 100, with him being lead vocalist. Unfortunately, the single didn't match the same heights of success as Miss Me Blind, only managing to reach number 41. However, despite the poor commercial reception of the single and album, thanks to the relatively new medium of music videos, Jermaine was able to show his audience that he was an exceptional dancer and someone with a very unique style and personality, both in his music and singing, but also in his fashion. If all you've heard of this debut album is the lead single, I recommend that you go back and give the rest a listen. There's some really impressive production and vocal work across the whole project. But not fazed by the lackluster response to his debut solo project, Jermaine would soon be back in the studio to record the follow-up record.
You got it, ladies and gentlemen, Jermaine Stewart.
The summer of 1986 saw the release of Frantic Romantic, Jermaine's second studio album. The lead single here would go on to become his biggest hit, and the song that Jermaine is still known for to this day. We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off became one of the biggest summer smashes of 1986, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and peaking at number 2 in the UK and Canada.
Now Dance 86, the best dance hits you've heard all year, including Jermaine Stewart.
After years of hard work, perseverance and determination, Jermaine had evolved from the teenage dancer on Soul Train to having a top 5 Billboard single to his name, something any aspiring singer would dream of.
We all know you from the single, We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off.
You sound good.
Yeah.
The album itself was more successful than the previous one. This one peaked at 32 in the Billboard Albums chart, Whilst Clothes Off is the signature song everyone remembers Jermaine for, he did have a minor follow-up hit. Jody, partly inspired by his old friend Jody Watley, made it to number 9 on the US dance chart, but sadly didn't really make an impact elsewhere. This musically is probably Jermaine's strongest album, so giving the full thing a listen is definitely recommended. The title track in particular is definitely one to remember.
Now you of course had the major monster hit, We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off to Have a Good Time. And this is your third album, and your albums all have been like major chart busters, huh?
Fingers crossed.
But this one, you want how many hits on this?
I want at least 9.
9 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
2 years after the success of Frantic Romantic, Jermaine released his third studio album, Say It Again, in 1988. The lead single, which was also the title track, just missed out on the Billboard Top 40. However, it did have success in European territories, particularly the UK, where it peaked at number 7. This album, an era for Jermaine, indeed signified the decline of his star in the United States. Say It Again, the single, was his last to even chart on the Hot 100 to date. Some follow-up singles from the new album were released, but again, only found success in various countries across Europe. By the time 1989 came around, Jermaine's musical career and success had lost most of its momentum, falling from the heights of Clothes Off from only just 3 years earlier, a sign how fast the pop music industry can change.
And I think you got another smash album, Jermaine. How do you keep coming up with these good songs?
Oh wow, keep coming. You have to keep coming home. You know, the Soul Train. Get groomed up. Right?
Determined as ever, Jermaine was able to put out one more album in the 1980s, which was also his last album to meet the 4-album deal he had signed with Arista. What Becomes a Legend Most was released in 1989, and completely bombed commercially. Whereas the previous album, Say It Again, had been a modest success around Europe, this time around Jermaine couldn't even rely on that support. The album itself didn't chart anywhere, and the 2 singles released, Tren d'Amour and Every Woman Wants To, only charted in one territory, the UK. But even then, they charted at 97 and 95 respectively, so virtually went unnoticed by the music-going public. It almost feels like a full circle when looking at Jermaine's career as the 80s concluded. He started out as a professional dancer who, after securing a record deal, had a debut album that left little impact. Now, 5 years from that debut album, here he was with his 4th effort, which made just as little, if not less of an impact on the music scene. But what would the 1990s hold for Jermaine? In 1991, Jermaine began working with Reprise Records on a new album, to be titled Set Me Free. The following year, the lead single, which again was the title track, Set Me Free, was released to the public. Sadly, it didn't chart anywhere and had very limited success, only scraping on the bottom end of the US dance charts. However, it did mark a change in Jermaine's musical style, his sound bearing now more of a hip-hop, house-inspired flavour, one that was very popular in the 1990s. Even Billboard had positive things to say about the single. Long-absent Stewart switches labels with a slick, trend-conscious funk jam that benefits greatly from his warm and appealing voice. Things continue to decline for Jermaine, however, as due to the lackluster success of the single Set Me Free, the album of the same name would go on to be shelved. To this day, that album has not been released. Despite the blowback from having his 5th album shelved by Reprise, Jermaine would return to the studio once more in the mid-90s to begin recording another album, to be titled Believe in Me. Numerous tracks were completed when the ultimate tragedy struck. For some time, Jermaine had been suffering from liver cancer, which consequently was AIDS-related. The rising AIDS virus spread panic across the world, with the little knowledge possessed at the time contributing to widespread fear and discrimination of those who were gay. Jermaine, from those who knew him, didn't let any of this negative stigma affect his attitude and outlook on life, that even in his final few years, he always knew how to keep a room smiling and vibrant with energy. Eventually, however, on March 17, 1997, Jermaine Stewart died of AIDS-related liver cancer at the age of just 39. He was buried without a gravestone, and would go without one for the next 17 years, until finally, in 2014, one was finally placed for him, affectionately, by his mother. So whilst Jermaine hasn't been with us on the earth for over 20 years now, his impact and talent should not go unnoticed. Despite not having the greatest of successes, even with his more popular songs and albums, Jermaine was a performer who was able to appeal to legions of fans at a time when people could have easily turned away from him due to his sexuality, his personality, and the way he presented himself and his music. So even though We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off is a song that I'm sure will live on as the years go by, don't forget other fantastic songs like Frantic Romantic or Say It Again. Give those albums another full re-listen, and I would be confident that you will feel more of an appreciation for this artist. May Jermaine Stewart continue to rest in peace, and may we as consumers of music not forget or overlook the fantastic work that he gave us, in a life that was snatched from him far too soon.